Good morning, everybody, and let's begin today's session. Am I audible enough? Can you hear me clearly?
Good morning. You are audible.
Yeah. Okay. So now during the presentation, if you have any questions, any of you, or anything related to anybody has any questions, just feel free to turn on your microphones and ask them. Or if you want to put it in the chat box, in the message box. Okay. So just don't hesitate to ask your questions. 1 minute. You could either type it in the message box or you could just maybe turn on your microphones and ask them directly. Yeah. So in today's session, we'll discuss mostly about MS in US. I mean, the entire application process. How do you go about what universities look for in applicants? About your SOPs, LORs, including the finances, the visa part. So we try to cover as much as possible. If you have, like I said, if you have any questions in the middle of the session, I mean, just feel free to ask them. At the end, we'll have a question and answer session also. So let's begin today's presentation. Now, okay, so let's begin with what universities look for in applicants. I mean, that is generally the first thing that students, when they start applying, the question that comes to their mind is how do universities evaluate your applications? Now, when you look at how universities evaluate your applications, these are basically the parameters that they consider while evaluating your application. The first and the most important aspect that most universities consider is your overall GPA. GPA, it could be your percentages, your grades, or anything. I mean that your current university uses. Most universities now follow a CGPA system in India. So your CGPA is out of 10. In some cases, that is out of 4. But whatever it is, that is what the universities look at. Your past academic performance is the most important factor that universities consider when evaluating your application. And then they start looking into the GRE or then the GMAT scores. TOEFL or IELTS are not very important, but yes, they are also considered. Now, many universities have started giving out waivers for GREs. That is, they don't require the GRE anymore. Like pre-COVID, almost every university in the US required the GRE or the GMAT. But now, most universities, I wouldn't say most, but there are still almost 20-25% of the universities who have said that they would not require the GRE. So now, when you eliminate the GRE out of the equation, they would still be considering your GPA. If you're applying for a research program, then what past research experience do you have? Some universities, again, depending on which program you apply to, would also consider your work experience if you have any. Like most schools, most business school programs generally give a little importance to your work experience. Whereas if you look at research-based programs, like the traditional program, something like a computer science or maybe an core engineering program or maybe a pure sciences program, they generally look at research experience more than the work experience. I mean, they prefer students who have some good research experience rather than work experience. Uh, Again, then the next thing that they would look at is your SOPs, LORs, and your overall resume. Now, because universities get a lot of applications, right? Like for example, say there's a university that for a program has an intake of around 100 students, and they might receive say around 1,000 applications for that program. So the first screening generally happens on your overall GPA and your test scores. So what they would do is that based on maybe say they have received 1,000 applications, so the first level of screening would happen on your GPA and test scores. They would screen out, say, okay, out of the 1,000, let's look at students whose GPAs are above so and then GRE scores are above minimum cutoff. For most tech programs or most sciences or engineering programs, the quantitative score of GRE is more important than the overall GRE score. So, for example, if you have a 320 on the GRE, but if it's like a 170 and 150, that is generally would be or rather a 165, 155 would be a better score than having a quantitative score of 160 and verbal also 150, especially if you are applying for a tech program. By tech, I mean most engineering programs, computer science, or even some any program that requires you to be good in mathematics or statistics or those kind of finance. Those are programs that really require a very, I mean, universities prefer a higher quantitative score. So the first level of screening generally happens on your GPA and GRE score. So out of maybe the 1,000 applications, the university would filter out say around 700 applications and only consider maybe 250, 300 applications, where they would then go into the details of your resume, the work experience that you have, what kind of research experience have you in the past. They would then read your SOPs and LORs, and that is how the application works. So many times students have this notion that okay, although universities in the US follow a very subjective application process, a subjective evaluation process, it is not 100% subjective. That is, it is not that just one component of your profile can help you get admission. Like for example, if you have a low GPA, low GRE score, but you write an excellent SOP, now that is not going to help you get admitted into a US university. So, like I said, the first level of screening happens on the GPA and GRE scores. Uh, and then they would look at your resume, your SOPs, your LORs, and then take a decision. So, it is very much possible that there are 10, I mean, out of the 300 students whom they have shortlisted in the initial screening, it is possible that someone with a slightly lower GPA gets in, or slightly lower GPA and GRE score gets in because they have a much stronger resume and a very good SOP. Uh, like for example, there could be a student who would have a 9.25 GPA, whereas this person can get an reject, whereas someone with a 9 GPA might get a admit because they feel that their other profile of the student is pretty strong. So in that sense, it is subjective in the sense that it is not like everybody who has a 9.25 GPA will definitely get an admit, and anything below that would get a reject. So they wouldn't put out a merit list like they generally put out in Indian colleges, where it is only based on one exam or one parameter. But it is not also 100% subjective in the sense that nobody is, I mean, the admissions committee, because they receive a lot of applications, they are not going to read every application in detail. The first round of screening would happen on your test scores on and the GRE. They would have an internal cutoff saying that these are the minimum scores or the minimum GPA that we would be requiring, and then they would start looking at the other parts of your application to determine whether you actually should be given an admit or not. Um, Now, when you are basically deciding on which universities to apply for, any questions so far? So, for those who joined late, if you have any questions, just feel free to interrupt me, turn on your microphones and ask, or you can then put it in the chat box. So, whatever you're comfortable with. Any questions so far?
I have a question.
Yeah, yeah, Nikhil.
Yeah. So, somebody who has a work experience, let's say, of 3 years, and so that's basically his or her college degree is not the most recent part of his profile. So, will the GPA still play a major role in the evaluation process for the application of that candidate?
Well, it again depends on which program are you applying for. If you're applying, which program, I mean, if you don't mind sharing, which program are you applying for?
So let's say I'm applying to a data science program, and my work experience is also with working upon data science related projects for let's say last 3 years. And like there is like constructive thing that I can show as part of my CV or resume that I've been doing this, and I have research papers as well in that. And let's say GPA is not so good.
Okay. So generally what happens is if the again a data science generally is, if it's part of the computer science program, I mean generally if it's offered by the computer science department, they are a little specific in terms of your GPA. But now many universities have started new programs which are data science programs, which are course part of the computer science department, but many since this is a fairly new program, because 5 years down the line, I mean prior to this, many universities didn't have data science as a separate degree. So especially these new degrees are a little more, I mean, I would say accommodating to in. I would say, I mean, they are a little flexible in accepting students with slightly low GPAs if your profile is strong enough, like especially data science programs or some business analytics programs. These are courses that generally do accept. Sometimes even data analytics programs. I mean, they're not purely data science, but data analytics programs they do accept. But in your case, right, Nikhil, what I would also suggest is that if you decide that okay, some university which is really ambitious on your list, you can even start writing or start talking to some of the faculty there, so that when they receive your application, they know that okay, yes, the student has communicated with us in the past. Um, so those are things that you can do. Maybe I'll discuss that a little ahead in the in this presentation, on what else can you do to make, especially improve your chances of getting an admit. Because it is quite possible that some universities would clearly screen you out just based on the GPA. But if your GPA is weak and you feel that your other parts of the application of your profile are very strong, then you could write to the faculty or maybe connect with someone who has some faculty, and prior to applying as well as once you apply, so that sometimes that can help you get your, I mean make the application committee have a second look at your application, or maybe a little better look at your application, and try to ignore your GPA point.
Uh, okay, got it. Thank you.
Uh, Vinal, as a question, I mean, what about professional masters in CS, right? So now again, even in professional masters in CS, there are some professional masters, like especially you look at programs like Irvine or Wisconsin Madison, UIUC. Yes, they prefer students with slightly with work experience. I mean, Irvine in fact says that you should have at least 1 year of work experience. Some other programs also prefer students with slightly some experience, but GPA is still important in those cases in the CS program. However, comparatively, if you see between, like if you look at the say Wisconsin Madison as a professional master's program as well as the traditional MS program, comparatively you will see that students who get admitted to the professional program with slightly lower GPAs also manage to get in if they have some good experience to show. But traditional, compared to the traditional CS program, but again, it doesn't mean that if your GPA is very low and you have work experience, you would get it. Okay. Mm. Okay, compare. Okay, someone here has asked a question: do students who give TOEFL are given more priority compared to IELTS? Definitely not. Universities really don't care whether you have given the TOEFL or IELTS, as long as you meet the minimum cutoff. So generally, what happens is the TOEFL or IELTS is only a qualifying exam. When I say it's a qualifier exam, in the sense they just want to ensure, because only international students from certain countries give the TOEFL or IELTS. Not everybody gives the TOEFL or IELTS. For example, if you have studied in the US or any other English-speaking country, you are not required to give the TOEFL or IELTS or any other English language exam. So India, many universities still consider India as a non-English speaking country, and so students from India have to give the TOEFL or IELTS. So now generally the department that you apply to does not really look into the details of your TOEFL or IELTS. It is more of an international students admissions committee's requirement. So as long as you meet the cutoffs that the university has set for your TOEFL or IELTS score, it does not matter which exam you give. So I would say whichever exam you are comfortable with, you can go ahead. Now, when you go, let's come to how do you go about, or what factors generally you should be looking at while selecting your universities. And generally, these are the factors that you should consider. I mean, of course, first is the program or courses that you are offered. Um, then you look at the rankings of the program. Generally, I recommend look at US news rankings, that is US news ranking, because they are the most authentic rankings for graduate schools in the US. When I mean graduate school, I mean master's programs in the US. There are other rankings, like for example, there is Financial Times ranking. Then there is what I think QS World rankings and all that. But QS World basically ranks the overall university. What US News does is that they rank every department, and these rankings, they have different rankings for master's programs and undergraduate programs. So I would suggest that if you're looking at US universities as in to apply to US universities, look at US News rankings. They are comparatively more. I would say they are more authentic than any of the other rankings that we have seen. Uh, um, then also, when you look at search for universities, one important factor is the cost of the program, because there are universities that, on an average, the cost of a master's degree, I'm just talking of the tuition, would vary anywhere from $40,000 per year to it can go as high as $75,000-$80,000 as well. For example, there are universities like Duke, Columbia, NYU, which are John Hopkins or UPenn, University of Pennsylvania, high-ranked universities, but their programs are slightly expensive. The tuition itself could go to $75,000, even CMU for that matter, right? So now, when you decide on the universities, one factor that you should also consider is the cost. And by cost, I mean you should also consider whether you are in a position to afford that kind of a university. So, for example, if you apply to CMU and even if you get in, um, if you ask me, is it worth going to? Definitely yes. But then, if you can't manage the funds and if you have some clarity on the budgets that you have set aside for your education, including the education loan of how much loan are you eligible for, if you kind of do that kind of calculation a little early in your application process, you will be in a better position to understand whether, okay, should I even apply to a Columbia or a CMU, because although it's high ranked, it's going to be an expensive program. And if even if I get in, will I be able to afford? Because if you can't afford that university, I would recommend don't apply. Applications to US universities are not free in most cases. You will spend at least $100 on your application fees. You might spend more on sending your TOEFL, IELTS, or GRE scores to the university. So all said and done, you might spend some 8 to 10,000 on the whole application process itself per university. So why waste money on a program which you really can't afford to go to? But if you can afford and you really want to go to, definitely apply to a good university. Now, if you look at career opportunities at the university, or if you look at past profiles, now this is data which is generally not very easy to get. There is no good source of data, or there is no one place where you can find data on these points. A good way would be to talk to your seniors who have already been studying at these universities, connect with students on LinkedIn. And this would come especially in case you want to decide, okay, whether I should apply to maybe say a sunny Buffalo, or maybe I want to apply to say a University of Illinois Chicago, but you don't have much information on their website on what kind of jobs do students get after graduating from these universities. You can definitely start connecting with students from on LinkedIn, talk to your seniors who are studying there. There are a lot of resources available online. Sorry. And you can take advantage of that, because that will help you decide on whether or not that's a university that you should consider or not. Generally, going to a big city has a slight advantage, and that is one of the reasons why I have location here as well. Um, a big city will give you advantage in terms of job opportunities. Although after post-COVID, things are changing slightly, because most companies now prefer have this online work culture. They even do interviews online. So prior to COVID, what used to happen is the location was a very important factor in most cases, because the first round of interviews that universities would conduct for students when it came to full-time jobs or even internships was generally in person. Now, say for example, you are studying at a university in San Francisco or somewhere in the Bay Area. Any company located in that area would generally call students for interviews in person. Now, if it's a big company, like say it's a big company, like one of those Apples or Google, Microsoft, Facebook or Meta, or any of these big companies, they have a very structured recruitment program. When I say recruitment program, in the sense they would have a list of say top 20 universities that they would visit. Or they would do campus, not exactly campus recruitment, but at least attend their campus fairs on the universities, or they would invite applications from students from such universities. Uh, but if you look at smaller companies, like say a small company, and when I say small company is anywhere between 100 to 500 employee company located in San Francisco, if their requirements are say hiring, they want to hire say 10 graduates or 10 master students, they wouldn't do a whole country tour to admit students all around the US. What they would do is, they would probably, when they put up their job post, they would call in students who are locally available to them. So sometimes, a student from Berkeley might also get interviewed, and sometimes even a student from a university like San Jose State University might also get interviewed, only because the student is really locally available. So, although, for example, San Jose State University, it's not very high on the ranking, it's very popular because of its location. So, now if you compare an equally good university in ranking, say maybe Missouri State University is as good as a San Jose State University, but it's somewhere in Missouri, which is not very popular, I mean, not a very industrial town. Now, a company in San Francisco would not generally invite a student from who is located in Missouri for an interview, because then the question would come is who would pay for their airfare, maybe who would pay for all the accommodation, boarding, and all that travel things, making arrangements. Whereas they have to invite someone from who is locally available in the city or who is in the Bay Area, the companies generally don't have to worry about paying for travel and all that. Nobody is going to pay you an Uber fare, or if it's like a 10-mile away from the campus, you stay 10 miles away from the company, you would rather also not want to ask for a bus fare or a Uber fare or something like that. And that is why these universities in big cities start are very popular, because students find it easy to get recruitment or at least interview calls from smaller companies in the big cities. But again, if it's a big company that is hiring, like Google would even go to right across all over the country. They would go to an Austin, they would go to Madison, they would go to Penn State, and all the big universities. Even though they are not really, I mean, they wouldn't care about the pricing or the budgeting and all that, because their recruitments are slightly bigger. Post COVID, what has happened is many companies have started their on first or second round of interviews online. The online interviewing culture has caught up so much that generally they would do their first and second round of interviews online, and that is why even students at not so popular locations or not so big locations have started getting interview calls. And once you clear the first or the second round of interview, and the company feels that you are still a very good candidate, they wouldn't mind then paying for the travel and accommodation if they really want to conduct a final round of interview. So although location is still a little important, it is not as important as it was pre-COVID. But if you have an option of going to a big city or a good location, without compromising on the quality of education. I mean, I wouldn't say go to a New York or go to Chicago or any university in New York, Chicago, or San Francisco just because it's in that location. Without compromising on the quality of education, if you can, you have the option of going to a big city, I would say prefer that. I think there are some questions. Josna has answered some of them. But if there is any other question, any other questions so far? Yeah, Varad, you can just turn on your microphone and ask.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask in the programs which are non-thesis one,
Mhm.
like how much your research experience is valued, or like if you don't have research experience,
See,
how?
if it was a non-thesis program, then they wouldn't really bother much about your research experience.
Okay, so it would be like as you said, just GPA, GRE.
GPA, and then if you have some work experience, great. Internships or work experience, that is something that would matter. But core research experience will not matter much.
Okay, yeah, yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Now, how many universities should you apply to? Generally, this is what we recommend. Again, it all depends on every student's profile and how many you want to apply to. Some students apply to only five total. Some students apply to even 15. But most students are what generally what we would recommend is applying to maybe a mix of around seven, eight. On the higher side, I would say go for up to 10 universities. But if you're applying to more universities, like say if you're applying to 10 universities, I would suggest keep at least five universities more on the ambitious side. Keep maybe three or four universities on the moderate side and maybe one or two safe universities. Also, if you, I mean, the reason why I would suggest that is at the end of your whole admission cycle, it is better to get one ambitious university or what you call as your dream university, or to get into one ambitious university rather than getting 10 admits if you apply to all safe universities, because you will be studying at only one university. And generally, even so, although psychologically students feel, oh, I got six admits, seven admits, it really doesn't matter. Getting one good admit is better than getting 10 safe admits. So when you plan, if you really want to apply to a higher number of universities, say 10 or above or 8 or 10, try to apply to more ambitious universities. And again, when I say ambitious, I don't mean really ambitious for your profile, where you have like a 2% chance or a 5% chance, but something that you feel that okay, with my profile in the past, students have gotten, but not everybody has gotten. I have like a 40-50% chance of getting in there. A safe or a moderate university would be something where you have almost like a 70-80% chance of getting in, and a safe is almost like a 100% chance where you know that for my profile, you would definitely get it for the kind of profile that you have. Now, again, when do you apply? So these are generally the tentative timelines that we would recommend for applicants who are. But again, these are not really. I mean, these are generally guidelines for most that would apply for most universities and most students. For very some programs, like if you're applying to really specialized programs, the timelines might vary. But this is the timeline that you should tentatively follow if you are a fall applicant, and I think most of you here today are fall applicants, but if you are a spring applicant, then you really need to hurry up with your applications. By end of this month, you should be done with your application. Ideally, if you had applied by end of July, that would have been great, but even end of August is absolutely okay. So if someone here is applying for a spring intake, the January intake, uh, then definitely do it soon. If you are most of you, I feel here are fall applicants. You still have time to work on your applications. If you can finish off your applications by end of November, great. If not, try to at least apply by mid January. That is what I would recommend. There are a few universities that still have applications open till March. So it doesn't mean that if you don't apply by January, you should not apply, or you are complete, then you would wait for next year. You still have, but of course, your choice of universities might be slightly narrow in that case. Okay. Now, one any questions so far on this, on when to apply? And
One
Yeah,
question.
hello Jay.
yeah, yeah,
Hello
sure.
Jay. Will you please repeat the application? Because I just joined. There is a lag connection. That's why. Means when to apply for the when to start our application process in fall
Right.
or just fall. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, if you're a Jayesh, are you a fall applicant, or
Yeah. Yeah. Fall
you're applying for the
2024.
fall 2024, that is August 2024 intake, right? So in that case, like I said, if you can finish your applications by November end, that is really great. There are some universities which would have deadlines around 1st December, 15 December. That would be the deadlines of universities. But depending on your profile, there would be many universities that would also have deadlines around 15 Jan, 1st of February. So if you think you still need more time to maybe improve your test scores, or maybe you're not ready to apply by November, even if you apply by mid Jan, that is okay. Okay. But if you don't apply by mid Jan, then you can still apply by March, but then your choice of universities would be slightly lower. Okay. Yeah, Varad, did you have a question?
Yeah, actually, I had one question. Like you might cover this later, but I just wanted to know few universities emphasize on priority deadlines.
Yes.
So, what are they, and like, what are is the benefit of applying in priority deadline?
Right. So very few universities, and especially this is a more culture with undergraduate admissions, and then also many business school programs. They have something called priority deadline. Amongst the computer science or the engineering programs, I feel very few. I think only UPenn has a concept of priority deadline. I think John Hopkins has something. If I don't, University of Chicago, Northwestern has. Very few of them have. But I'll just tell you what priority deadline is. Like for engineering management programs, if you look at Duke has a priority deadline of I think it's January 15th, and then they have a regular deadline of March 15th. Uh, Also, some universities have rolling admissions. I'll cover both priority deadline. I'll tell you what priority deadline is and what rolling admissions are. Uh, so what happens in priority deadline is that universities first, when you apply in a priority deadline, there is a higher chance of you getting an admit compared to you applying in the regular round or the second round of admission, provided your profile is same. So if you are not, what I would suggest is if you are applying to a university that has a priority deadline or has a rolling admission, then apply early or try to meet the priority deadline. Because as and when you start going ahead in the application process, like if you apply in the priority deadline, the university generally gives out admission to almost I mean, if they have say 100 seats, they would almost roll out admissions to almost 60 to 70% of the students who apply. The intake is generally higher in priority, so almost 70% of the seats are filled in the priority deadline. Now in the regular round, what happens is generally they expect more applications, and then they become a little pickier in selecting or rolling out admissions. So what we have observed, or generally you will find that for the same profile, students who applied in the priority deadline have managed to get an admit, whereas if you apply in the regular round, the chances of getting become a little more difficult. But having said that, if you think that okay, your professor, say for example, you have a score, GRE score, but that is not really very strong, and or maybe one of the components in your maybe your TOEFL scores or IELTS scores are not up to the mark. In that case, you can definitely wait and apply in the regular round if you think you need that extra time to improve your profile. But if your profile is not going to change, then I would strongly recommend applying in the priority round. Now, many universities follow a rolling admission process. By rolling admission, again, rolling admission is not first come first serve. Many students have this misconception that universities follow a first come first serve process. It's not exactly first come first serve. It is rolling admissions. In rolling admissions, universities evaluate applications as and when they receive. That is what the definition means. So they wouldn't wait till the deadline, uh, and then at the end of the deadline look at all applications. For example, if a university has rolling admissions, universities that um, they would have a deadline as late as say even June of 2024, or even maybe sometimes some universities have 1st of July, some have April. But it doesn't mean that if say for example 1st of April is the deadline for a university and the university says that they follow a rolling admissions process, if you apply in November or you apply early December, by January, they would even give you a decision on your application. They wouldn't wait till the deadline and then make a decision. So, in that case, applying early, that is, applying in the month of November or December for universities that have a rolling admission, will slightly maximize your chances of getting admission, because if you apply as late as March, thinking that okay, the deadline is 1st of April, by March, they would have already given out, say, for university has an intake of say 100 students. That is what their capacity is. they might have already rolled out more than 90 or even more admits, waiting for students to confirm. And now in March, they would be a little more pickier when they come to, deciding on whether or not to admit a student. So applying early has an advantage, especially in cases of admits universities that follow a rolling admission process. Also, what happens is, okay, now just because you apply early doesn't mean that you will get in. The university would still have a minimum standards that they would have for students to, for them to select students and make their decisions. But applying late will only decrease your chances of getting in. Again, if you have a very strong profile, you might still get in applying later. But generally, it is observed that just students with very similar profile, those who applied early have got admission, whereas the similar students with similar profiles who applied late have been rejected by many universities. So, as a recommendation, again, I would say if you're done with your GRE, if you're done with your TOEFL, IELTS, by November, try to finish off your application. If you need more time to apply, then definitely, to improve your scores or give your exam, then you can definitely wait. But don't just wait because you are lazy enough to work on your application. Now most universities that have deadlines in the month of December, right, uh, they generally don't follow a rolling admission process. Like for example, if the deadline is 1st December, generally they will not follow a rolling admission process. What they will do is they'll wait till 1st of December, uh, see all the applications that have come in after by then, and then collectively look at the applications. Universities that have late deadlines, like say deadlines March or later, generally follow a rolling admission process. Like whenever you apply, within 4 to 6 weeks, they would make a decision. So if you apply in November, they would make a decision there. Maybe by December end or January, they would give you a decision. I think Prathamesh had a
Hi.
question. Yeah,
Yeah, I was just waiting for you to finish that.
yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
My question was actually a little specific. So I'm planning
Mhm.
to give my GRE tentatively by mid or early November. So
Okay.
in that case, my rest of the things, TOEFL and all the things are ready. My concern was that if my GRE is done by November, early November, then in that case, should I start the preparation for my SOP and LOR in parallel with the preparation, or will it be very late if I give the GRE and then start working on the rest of the things?
See, you can start everything in parallel. Okay, there is no, see, for example, apply for transcripts from your, see, for basically for application, what do you need? You will need transcripts,
Yeah,
uh,
transcripts I have applied.
right? You will need letters of recommendation from three professors or three people who can give you letters of recommendation. So I would suggest identify your recommenders. You should know who is going. You can talk to them and tell them that I would be requiring letters of recommendations. You would need a resume. Um, you would need a SOP, or depending on the program that you are applying to, you might have some specific application questions. My recommendation is start working on other things simultaneously, but not at the cost of your GRE preparation. Right? It's not that okay. You have to put in all the time towards your application, and that is why because of that your GRE preparation suffers. So don't make that. Don't let that happen. But simultaneously, you can start thinking of the thing of the the applications also in parallel. Tentatively, you can finalize your university. I mean, you by now would have a fair idea on what kind of a score you would expect from the GRE or during the GRE. Like you know that okay, this is my profile. I would at least want to aim for maybe a 320 or 315 or 330 or whatever it is. Based on your profile, you will have a fair idea of okay, this is the score I need to aim for. Now, once having said that, right? Okay, now let's assume that okay, you are aiming for a 320 and you get a 320. Which universities would like to apply to? I would say make a tentative list of that also. I mean, you can start finalizing on the universities as well, so that you know that okay, these are the universities, these are their deadlines. If most of them have a 1st December deadline, you know that I would need an SOP. Now, irrespective of your universities that you apply to, the transcripts, your SOPs would change to a certain extent, but LORs and all would not change. So I would say get your LORs drafted, get them approved from your faculty. You can actually fill the applications after your GRE, But after the GRE, it would only mean just filling your applications and submitting them, which would not take more time. I mean, one application would take you maybe 30 minutes if everything is ready. If your SOPs are ready, if your resume is ready, you have your transcripts as a PDF ready that you can upload. So filling up an application would take you 30 minutes, maybe max an hour. So the day you finish your GRE, if your TOEFL and IELTS are also ready, then maybe the day you finish your GRE, you should be able to come home and submit one application. I mean, you should be that ready. Or maybe you might want to keep the final touches to your SOP later. Maybe the first draft is ready, but then you would like to work on refining that post your GRE, because you would still have almost 2-3 weeks for a university that has a 1st December deadline. Maybe some part of it you can keep it, but I would not recommend start thinking on the application after your GRE. If you can parallelly start looking at some aspects of your application, great.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Vaidhi.
Hi, sir. So, if I'm planning to apply around the December deadlines, would the before the end of the summer term be a good time to contact professors?
Oh, okay. I mean, if you're planning to apply for the December end of the summer term, in the sense,
As in, before fall 23 begins, because I believe during the summer term is when they actually have time to go through prospective emails for fall 2024 and the GRAs and GTS that they can offer.
yeah. So correct, right? So basically, you're talking of see, because currently it is summer in the US. So you're talking of now or next summer?
Now.
Now, right? You can definitely start contacting them, and of course, yes, if you know which universities, which professors you want to contact, you can start writing to them saying that I'm going to apply for the fall 2024 intake. And if you want to do that right now, that would be a good thing to do. Again, it doesn't mean that summer would end almost in the next 2 weeks,
Right.
and the fall session would begin maybe from end of August or early September, depending on the university, right? So even if you write to them in fall, it is still okay. It is not that someone is so busy. Even it doesn't mean that if you write now, you have a higher chance of getting a reply, and later you don't. You will still get a reply, and some professors will not reply. Be prepared for that. So but yes, you can start if you really have a resume ready and you think you are ready to write to faculty. You can do that right now also.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh, Rishikesh has a question about the job market in the US. Rishikesh will come to that later once we just talk about the application part. Um, Now, okay, if there is someone here who uh, who is applying for spring and wants to know what is the difference between applying to spring and fall. The basic difference is that if you go in spring, right, of course, first is there are some universities that don't have spring admissions. In the sense, they will not admit students in spring, so you have to apply in fall only. But if a university allows you to apply in spring or join the university in spring, then you have the option. The disadvantage as an international student, if you are going on an F1 visa, is that you will not be allowed to do an internship in the summer uh, of 2024. So basically, if you start your program in January 2024, the summer of 2024 will start in the month of May or June. So during that period, most students prefer to do an internship. But to do an internship, you will have to complete at least 2 semesters of coursework. That is, only when you finish full semesters of coursework, you are allowed to do an internship. So students who go in spring do not get the opportunity to do an internship in the first summer. They will then have to either wait for the next semester, next year to do an internship. So some universities again don't allow internships in the except in summer. So waiting till the next summer sometimes becomes too late, because it is better to graduate and find a full-time job rather than waiting and delaying your masters just for that internship. So that is a small disadvantage of going in spring. Um, I have a YouTube channel where I have actually put up some videos on these topics where I have discussed them in detail. Maybe you can refer to that if someone is interested. But if you have any questions so far, you can definitely ask me right now. Okay, anyway, let's quickly move on to the next part of you know um, we'll go quickly over the, I mean, before we go into the details of how to write an SOP or something, any questions so far on the application process or anything on when to apply? I think 1 minute. Someone here has put a question. Okay, Padma Priya has a question. Does writing to professors improve your chances of getting a, of improving your chances? Now, again, as Josna has replied to that, yes, it only see if your mail is relevant. I mean, whatever, it's not just writing is going to get you admit. It depends on what you write and what is the context of what you write, of what is written in that email. Generally, if you have some good research background, or if you think some aspects of your profile are really strong that can help you contribute towards the research work done by the professors, you could assist in the research work of a faculty, then it makes sense to write. Just writing a general mail saying that I am applying will not really help. They will say, okay, apply, or they may not even reply to that. But you will, if you're writing to a faculty, you will have to understand what, do some research on the background of the faculty, find out what is the professor's research interest, what are they working on, and if you can actually bring out some point of relevance between your current work or your areas of interest, or something that you have done in the past, maybe you have worked on some college level project or some paper which is in lines with what the professor is working on, then you can definitely write to the faculty. Otherwise, just writing random emails will not really help you. So based on, so have, and again, don't write very long emails. Nobody has time to read very long emails. So keep it short. You can attach your resume, and it should be relevant to the point. So yes, but if a professor feels that yes, this is a student who can really contribute to my research or can help me in the future, they would reply to your email. Writing a relevant mail and getting, and suppose let's say you write a mail, the professor replies. Many times they would also say that yes, I am interested, but let's wait for we will get, I'll get back to you on it, or maybe we can connect later once you actually get an admit or something like that. They might give a very generic reply. It might still give you an advantage that once you apply, right, you could just reply to that mail again saying that thank you for your mail, I have actually submitted my application, and after that, if you get an admit from that university, see, first is of course, if the professor feels that the student's profile is good, and this professor is part, if he or she is part of the admission committee, they might remember when they see your application. If not, they might also, it is possible that they might tell someone in the admission team that so and so student is applying or has applied, and I feel that this student's profile is strong. I would either recommend the student or ask the admission committee to give a, because a bit, I mean, a second look at your profile, that can be a possibility. And even otherwise, if you get an admit, right, you have something to connect to the professor once again, saying that I've received an admit, and then you can get into detailed discussions of what kind of research would you like to work on when you are a student there. You could ask them for suggestions on if there is some added preparation that they would want you to do, or some papers of theirs that they would recommend reading before you join the program. All this will help you eventually when you join the university in getting your graduate assistantships, or research assistantships, teaching assistantships kind of thing positions. So it is not that you write one email and that is going to help you get an admit, but it's a long process. I mean, it's part of the whole networking process that you will have to start, and you can start that early right now as well. Again, not required. Even without that, you will get an admit. But anything that you do to add value to your profile is always a good thing. Okay, now coming to your SOP, right? Most students have a very, what do you say? I would say there is always a lot of ambiguity towards what exactly is the SOP, and because in our past, in the Indian academic system, we are not used to writing an essay, or the only time you, I think, wrote essays was in school, and that was on very vague topics. But you never had to write an essay explaining why you would like to get an admit. Many students are very unclear on the SOP part. Also, there is, when you Google out on SOPs, right? Most of the times you will find content which comes out, which is more relevant to undergraduate SOP. Now, there is a big difference between writing a master's SOP and writing an undergraduate SOP. So you will find, because when you're writing as an undergrad student, right, when you're just finished your 11th standard up in your 12th standard and you're applying to a university, you may not have a lot of things to write about. Maybe say you're applying to a a bachelor's in computer science program. It is quite possible that you might not have even studied computer science as a subject in your high school or in your school level, right? So in that case, you would write about completely different things. You would talk about your overall profile, your extracurriculars, what kind of student you are, why you are interested in computer science, and that would be a slightly different thing. Now what happens is, in the US, even while you are applying for your bachelor's, you have to write an SOP, and there are a lot of content that you will find online who write where on how to write an SOP. The problem with that is most of them are written in context of an undergraduate admission. Most people don't understand that, and that is why, when that gets copied, a lot of misconceptions about how an SOP should be is out there on the internet. For a master's SOP, you should be very focused. You should only ideally talk about these four aspects in your SOP. One is, why do you want to, talk about, many times, students don't write about what their career and research goals are. So that is the most important thing. Talk about what is your future goal, or what aspects, because now you're basically applying for a specialized degree. A master's is more of a focused specialized degree and not a very generic degree. So why do you want to do a master's? What career goals or research goals do you plan to achieve? What past experience, that is, when I say past experience, it could be academic experiences like your projects, or maybe some of your papers that you are worked on, and which are relevant to the subject that you are planning to apply for. So what exactly are the relevant experience? It need not be, you need not write about all your experiences from the past, and why are you applying to this particular university? So that could be one part of it. So if you are applying to say 10 universities, I would say 20% of your SOP would change. Of course, unless a university has a very specific requirement, or some universities nowadays have question and answers. They don't have an SOP. They will ask you to answer two specific questions. First would be, tell us about your past experiences and research that is relevant to your course, and the other would be, what are your future career goals, and how will this university help you achieve those? They would be very specific questions, but unless they are specific questions and it's a general SOP that you're writing, only the aspect of why this university would change. The rest of it would be, your research goals, your past experiences, why MS, or why do you want to do an MS now, would all be same. But this should be the focus of your SOP. There are a few things that you should do while writing an SOP. I would say you can just read that. Um, One thing that you should do is, you should try to um, quantify things about what you have done. Because, see, for example, the way you need to think about it is like, say, you are a student of, say, you've done your bachelor's in computer science, you are applying for a master's. Or maybe you have 1 year of experience in some IT company. There is someone else who has done also a bachelor's in computer science, has 1 year of experience, and has almost similar GPAs as you. How do you differentiate yourself from the rest? Now that is something that you have to talk about. Most students, what they do is, they write about what projects they have done. Again, when you write about projects, right, it is sometimes difficult for a reader to understand how good or bad was this project, to put it in very simple terms. So try to quantify the work, try to quantify what has been your achievements. Say, for example, if you try to do maybe a project that improved a process, or in some way at work, or maybe in college, by how much, just saying that, okay, I did a project and this was the result, or this was the objective of the project, to what extent was it successful, what problems did you encounter while working on this project, what methods did you use to solve those problems? Those are things that you will have to try to highlight in the project. And what you should definitely not do is these things in the SOP. Now, there is an article on the SOP that I have written. It's on my website. You can take a look at that. Some days later, I'm planning to make a video, because most people are not very keen on reading articles, but in that article I have also given you some references of SOPs on how SOPs should be, which are written by some of the US professors on their blogs or their websites. So take a look at that. Um, but these are things that you should avoid while writing an SOP. You don't write about quotes. Now, the only time, because generally many students start off with a quote. Some students started off with a quote sometime in the past. They put it up on their internet. Every now student is copying the SOP with quotes. So avoid all those things. Avoid generic content. When I say generic content, in the sense, you don't have to tell, say if you're applying for a master's degree in computer science, you don't have to tell what computer science is, or what has AI or machine learning achieved in the past 10 years. I mean, they know that, right? The professor who is teaching at a university knows what machine learning is, what AI is, or what data science is. You don't have to tell them what data science is, or what data science has been able to achieve in the past 5 years or 10 years, or what is the future of data science. Don't treat your SOP as a magazine article. See, when you're writing a magazine article, the audience is very generic. uh, like, you have to build up the whole article. You need to give an introduction. There would be people who would not be knowing what data science is, so you have to first tell them what data science is. But when you're writing about an SOP, the objective is to tell the admission committee something about you, and tell them why are you a good student for that program, or why are you a good fit for that program, and how will the program help you achieve your career objective. That should be the focus of it. So they want to know, they want to read the SOP, not because they want to know about the industry or what are the trends in the technology that you are applying for, but what has been your work in this domain, and how can you actually contribute to their some of their research, or how can you add value to them, and what benefit would you get by pursuing this program. That should be the focus of it. And again, don't copy. There are a lot of I mean, almost every university now uses plagiarism checks. So they would kind of reject your SOP if they find that your SOP is copied. Yes, Nikhil. Any some question?
Could you please emphasize on point 4 and 5 of don'ts, like need not justify a bachelor's degree choice, or not every activity or project needs a mention?
Correct, right. So need not justify the bachelor's degree choice in the sense, for example, and this is typically for, and it applies to both. Like, and I'll give you an example in the sense, many students apply for a master's in computer science, some with a bachelor's in computer science, and some without. Right. If you are applying for a bachelor's, master's in computer science, you don't have to tell them why you chose bachelor's of computer science after 12th. Okay, that part need not be there in the SOP. Honestly, universities don't really care. They don't really care why you chose a bachelor's in computer science, or for that matter, why you chose a bachelor's in electronics and telecommunication, and now why do you want to apply for a master's in computer science. What they care is how good are you a student in computer science. That is what matters to them. So if you're applying for a master's degree, whether you were forced to go for a computer science program by your parents, or maybe you went for an electronics because you preferred the university or college, but computer science was not available for your scores after 12th, it doesn't really matter. Because when you try to justify, right, it most of the time sounds very cliched and fake. Like, why you chose electronics and now why you're going to computer science is always that story. I've never seen a convincing story. Because they understand how admissions work around the world. It is not that you need to justify why you did what you did, right? So if you're changing fields, or even if you are not changing fields, no point in emphasizing on that point. Try to emphasize on what have you learned, or what have you studied during your bachelor's program, that really makes you a good candidate to pursue your master's. And again, every project need not be so. Every project that you've done, or every activity, would come in your resume. Your resume would be a detailed resume of telling them about it. But say maybe in your second year of college, you have worked on a project on computer graphics, or something related to networks or securities, but now you are applying for a program in data science. That part need not even be mentioned in the SOP, because it's not really relevant, right? Say for example, you have worked on three main projects on data science related stuff. You are applying for a master's in data science, but in your entire resume you have worked on seven projects out of which 4 are not related to data science, or at least not very relevant to data science. So you try to focus more on the things that are relevant rather than focusing on everything in your SOP. That is what it means.
Got your point. So you suggest that somebody who happens to have an electronics and telecommunication bachelor's degree, and that person did not choose that degree. Basically, that was the only thing available if that person wanted to go into a decent tier 1 university.
Yeah.
And but was always interested and attracted towards, let's say, computer science or data science. So that part is not at all required to be justified. We can just go ahead with explaining how you are good at computer science and all in your SOP. Is this what you suggest?
That is what I would suggest. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Varat.
Just one question related to what you said. Like, suppose a person has like a few data science project and he's applying for computer science. Now, data science being subset of like little bit related to computer science, and can that person mention about those project as well for like how it took him, like how he did that and all? Like,
Yeah, definitely. See, data science is still a relevant thing to computer science, right? I'm saying,
yeah.
right now again, if you are saying that your interest is, see again, now, in some cases, right, you should. There are also students when nothing you have done is relevant also.
Okay.
Okay, that is also the case we have seen, and that is okay, right? So in that case, like for example, you did a project in data science. You did say most of your projects are in data science. To give an example,
Yeah.
right? And now you are applying for a, let's say you are applying for a master's in finance.
Okay.
Okay, we have done nothing in finance. Right. So in that case, you will have to talk about what skills or what knowledge that you probably developed by working on those projects that is going to be relevant to your master's program in finance. You will have to highlight on maybe on your programming skills, algorithmic skills, maybe your quantitative skills. Those are the kind of skills that you will have to highlight or talk about and how they are relevant. But say you are applying for a computer science program, then pick up the projects in computer science. And see, data science is also related to computer science. Maybe a graphics is also related to computer science. Security is also related to computer science. And if you have a mix of everything, right? If your resume, I mean, if your profile is in the past academics, you have done a mix of everything. So then talk about what are the most important ones that you feel where you have actually something really strong to demonstrate, and something which is if not very core relevant, at least has added to your skills or your learning. That is the kind of thing, those projects that you will have to talk
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Tanaya, the article on the of my SO, I think you have a question here. Where can you find the article on my SOP? It's there on my website. I'll maybe share the link of that after the this thing. I think Josna has put it in the uh, chat, so you can check on that. Some days later, like I said, I'm planning maybe in the coming 2 3 weeks. I should have a video on that also that I'll put up. You can watch that. Okay, let's move on. Okay. About LORs. Now, LORs are important, but not really very important. I mean, it is not really the most important aspect of your profile. It is an important thing. I would say don't neglect it, but at the same time, don't. It's not something that is really very important because um, most students, most see, ideally in an ideal world, right? The LOR is supposed to be a confidential document in the sense the faculty or the recommender, whoever, maybe from work or wherever, is not supposed to show you the LOR what they are writing. But in most cases, that doesn't happen. Most professors would ask you to send you them drafts of LOR. So they would say, okay, just write it and give it to me, and they will then upload it as part of the application. Now, just before you understand how the LOR process works in US universities, is that when you submit an application, the university will ask you to only submit the name and email ID of your recommender. Once you submit the application, the email would be sent to the recommender saying that, say for example, Nikhil has put in the names of 3 professors. So it would say an email would go to each of them and say they would the link message would kind of say that Nikhil is applying to so and so our program and has requested a recommendation. Please click on the link below and submit the recommendation. So the professor or the recommender would then have to click on the link that they get in the email and upload the reco there. Now they have an option of uploading there sometimes, and most universities would also ask them to rate you on a scale of 1 to 10 on some parameters, like what how hardworking were you, a hardworking student, or your technical capabilities and all that on a scale of 1 to 10. So they would have to fill in the rating, and then they would either have an option to either upload a reco as a file, or they have some universities will give them a text box where they can type in the record. Most universities, most professors or most recommenders prefer uploading it because they already have that document with them, which you have kind of provided them, and they have kind of proofread, and if some would make some changes and all that, and that is how the professor works. But if you want to make your recommender strong, right? I'm sorry, recommendation letter strong. Try to emphasize on, try to give examples rather than only talking of adjectives. I mean, most recommenders would not write a weak recommendation. I mean, if someone really writes that you are not a good student in the recommendation, and I would not recommend admitting so and so student, then that is a problem. But most professors don't do that. Unless you have really a bad relationship with your recommender. In that case, don't pick up such a professor. If you think that there is something doubtful, you don't trust the recommender, then don't choose that as your recommender, because it is up to you to decide who your recommenders are. In case you are trying to make your recommender strong, and if you want to do that, try to justify things that you have done with some examples. Like for example, if the professor is using an adjective saying that he or she is a very hardworking student, try to give some instance from your college days or work life which justifies that why does the recommender think that you are a hardworking student. That would make a strong recommendation. If they feel that you are a technically very savvy person, or you are exceptionally good at maybe programming, maybe an example of what programming that you have done, or maybe what have you done that would make this professor feel that you are really good at programming, or maybe at your quantitative skills, or whatever you're trying to say. um, do it is always a good thing if you can justify it. Now a question that I think Sagarika has asked, and many students have this, whether to get your recommenders, I mean choose your recommenders from college or choose them from the industry. Now if you have more than 1 year of experience in the industry, you can choose one recommender from the industry. Again, it also depends on which program you are applying to. Most core technical programs, engineering programs, computer science programs prefer academic recommenders. So if you are applying for say a CS program or an engineering program or something on those lines, you can preferably, you should at least have, out of the three recommenders, at least two should be academic, unless it's been more than 3 years that you are out of college. If you're applying to business school programs like say MIS courses or business analytics programs or even engineering management programs or any management or business related programs, you can have, maybe I'm say if you're working in the industry for 2 or 3 years, you can have all your recommenders from the industry. You need not get academic recommendations. But for technical programs, recommendation is I mean should be more of a, at least have two academic records. If you can get all three, that is great. If you, I mean if you're still in college or you don't have much years of industry experience, say less than one, you can get all three academic records as well. Okay. Again, recommendation is not a validation. I mean, in the sense, the recommender need not talk of everything that you have done in college. Many students write about all their technical, non-technical, other things, extracurriculars that they have done in college. That is not what it is. The recommendations are more like telling the admission committee what kind of a student are you. It is not validating every point that you have written in the resume. So don't, nobody's going to cross check your resume and your recommendation and say that okay, he or she has says that I was part of the IEEE. Yes, the professor has confirmed that I'm part. The student was part of the IEEE. That kind of validation is not going to happen. So don't worry about mentioning. You don't have to mention everything that is mentioned in the LOR in your resume. It has to come in the LORs.
Hi, I had a question.
Yeah.
So in my case, the professor with whom I had done the project
Mhm.
in my engineering is no longer working in the college. In fact, is has changed his job profile itself. So in that case, should I go to the same professor or should I look for different professors for
See, if the
recommendations?
professor is still working in another college, um, you can still go to that professor if you think that is, if you can't really find someone, because it so happens that professors change colleges. You can still approach the new professor. They would You can tell them in the recommendation, they would then have to definitely mention that while you were a student, or maybe till last year or whenever, I was working with so and so college, and that is when I was his faculty, and currently I am working with so and so university or college. And they will, I'm that is the reason, that is part has to be clearly mentioned in the LOR. So very much possible that you can approach the same professor if you think that professor's recommendation is relevant to you. If the professor is retired completely, because see, in the application, right, like I mentioned earlier, you will have to provide the name and email ID of the recommender. The email ID should be an official email ID. Sorry. I mean, it can't be a Gmail or a Yahoo kind of an ID. So when you're talking of an official email ID, this professor should still be associated with some organization so that they have an official email ID. It need not be the email ID of with your college domain, but it could be another college domain. That is fine.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Like,
Sure, Varad.
is it okay if that professor hasn't taught us but knows us very well? Like because of some extracurricular work, can we get like
Yeah. So again, now Varad, if you are applying, I don't know which program that you are applying for, but in most,
CS non-thesis, like
so
master?
if you are applying for a CS, I would say get recommendations from teachers who have taught you.
Okay.
That would always be better. Again, they need not be like, again, one of the questions I think someone had asked, and I think Josna had answered that. Is it really necessary to get, say, for example, if you are applying for a program, when you are in the application, you are saying that your interest is data science, but the professors that you have taught you had not taught you data science. So maybe you did
Yeah.
very well in the program, in a particular program who taught you networking. So can you get a recommendation from that professor? You can definitely get a recommendation from that professor. What subjects the professor has taught you, need not, I mean, not that all the three have to be completely relevant to the masters that you are applying to. You could get one professor who has taught you something related to data science or computer science core subjects. But if there is a professor who has taught you, say, mathematics or maybe some electronics related subjects, you could still get a recommendation from that professor if you think that you have done some really good work with this professor, or something that you have done is relevant but not maybe very core. But preferably get it from someone who has taught.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Sayed, can a recommender be from a different department? Yes, they can be from a different department, but they should have taught you. I mean, it's not that just because they know you on a personal level, you can't get a recommendation. But if you have taken some courses under the professor, they have taught you some subjects, or you have done some project under them, some academic project, non-academic project, technical projects, you can definitely get a recommendation from them. Padmapriya, I think you are.
Yes, so I had a similar question. Like the course that I studied from college is now been removed. So I see most of the professors have moved either into research or into corporates. So they're not into academic line.
You're
So
right.
does LOR from them also hold valid?
Yeah, you can still, if they're still in the academic field in some other college, you can get a LOR from them. If you're working, you can get some LORs from your current company if your job is relevant to the course that you're doing.
Okay, understood.
Yeah, Kushal.
Yes, so my question is regarding LORs itself.
Mhm.
So, what if a professor who taught me during my college time is retired now? So, is that LOR valid for me?
See, generally when they are retired, right, the problem that comes is that they don't have any official email ID. Right, so then it becomes a little difficult. If you can honestly find someone else who is still working in college or still has an official email ID, They can. If your professor still has an official email ID, they can give you a recommendation. But in most
Yes, so that is the case. That till the lifetime they have got that official email ID. It's not closed yet.
Then so that's what in case because some colleges provide lifetime email IDs to students and faculty. So if that is the case, they can definitely give you a LOR.
Okay,
It should
fine.
not be a problem.
So it's not the case that if they write the like when they write a LOR, there's a letterhead and their
No,
designation is
so
written there.
in most cases, a letterhead is not required. Okay.
Okay, so
For
it's not a problem if it's written there that they are retired already.
no, no,
So
absolutely not a problem.
okay, sure. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Sahil.
Yes, sir. Hello. So I had a question. If, for
Sahil, it's
example,
I can't hear you clearly. I mean,
hello, hello,
yeah, yeah.
hello. Yeah. So I had a question. If, for example, the current place that we are working in, they are not providing us an LOR because most of the time companies have a bond and they say if you are breaking the bond, we will not provide you an LOR or experience letter. In that case, what kind of situation? What should we do? Whether the college professors LORs and experience letter will work or like how
See,
will.
first of all, for US applications, you don't need any experience letter. Okay. The second thing is, I know Indian companies often create trouble with giving LOR. So, but honestly, the LOR is not given by the company. LOR is supposed to be given by the manager or supervisor whom you work with. So, technically, it is not a legal, a document that is given to you by the company. But many times it so happens that many managers or say that we will have to run it through HR or we will have to seek permission from the HR, and the HR says no, we will not give it. So even in case of colleges, right, the LOR is given by the faculty and not by the college. So in this case, right, what happens is, and as I said, there you don't need any letterhead or anything for the LOR, at least for US, as far as US universities goes. For UK and some other countries, you need letterheads, and they are very strict about it. But when it comes to US universities, they will only ask you for the name and email ID of your recommender. So if you're working in a company and you put in your manager's email ID, official email ID, an email would go to your manager or your faculty, and they will have to click on the link and upload a letter there. Now that letter can be, now there they can, like I said, there is a text box, they can just type the text and paste it there and press the submit button. That is a possibility. Or they can just simply upload a word or a PDF document written on plain, a letter which is written on plain paper. They don't even have to sign that letter. It will be just a word document that they will upload with the content of the LR, whatever they want to write about you, and upload and submit it. But what they will need is the email ID. You will have to provide the official email ID of the recommender. Now, in case your manager or your supervisor, project lead, or whoever you are getting the recommendation from is not willing to do that, they say that no, I will still have to run it through HR, and the HR says no, or you fear that the HR will not give it, then just get academic LORs. That is the best way to go ahead with it. Okay, it is not mandatory to get recommendations from work. And as far as your experience letter is concerned, as far as your applications and visas are concerned, you will not require your experience letters.
So, sir, wouldn't that create a gap of say 1 or 2 years in the.
No, no. Okay, so when I say you don't need an experience letter, doesn't mean you should not show that experience in the resume. Okay, what I'm saying is that the universities are not going to ask you for proof of what you have written in the resume or in your SOPs kind of thing, right? So you have
Oh,
a resume, you mentioned that you are working. You will not need any validation or any proof of from your company which will say that okay, this is an experience that so and so student says Sahil has been working with us from so and so date till now kind of thing. You don't need that letter from the company. And then
okay.
when you get an admit, once you get your visa or when it's the time to go, depending on whatever is your company's notice period, you might as well resign from that point and go.
Okay, okay, sir. Thank you.
But for your application, the universities will not, but definitely mention about your work in your resume.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Uh, okay. Let's Okay, we will go on to the finances part of it. Any other questions so far on the applications part? Anything that okay, of course, if you come across with something later, you can always ask. But let's quickly talk about the finances part. Now, all universities require that when you apply for the universities, I mean, when you basically apply for the most universities, when you apply, don't require any finances except for a very few universities, and one of them is very popular one is San Jose State University. What they require is they will require a bank letter or funds from maybe a loan sanction letter or a bank letter which will clearly say that you have funds to pay for at least 1 year of tuition and 1 year of living cost by the university. Uh, Now, universities give their own estimate of living cost, which is generally very high. But as far as the requirements of the university go, you will have to show to the university that yes, there are these funds available either with you or maybe one sponsor or multiple sponsors. Sponsors could be parents, brother, sister, whoever, uncle, aunt, whatever, whomever you want to bring as sponsors, or an education loan. Say for example, the university has a requirement that $50,000 is the total cost of the tuition and living for 1 year. Generally, this is very high. I mean, what the estimate is very high. That is not going to be your actual cost, so don't worry about it. But you will have to show the university that yes, there are $50,000 available with us. One way is to, if you're actually planning to apply for a loan, you show the loans, or you can show money in bank accounts, which is like your fixed deposits or your savings accounts. Some universities accept PPF, some don't. Again, depending on that, you will have to show this. Now, when will you have to show this? Is much after admission. So, what happens is you first apply. After the university has made a decision and said that okay, you have received an admit, your file then basically goes to the international students office. The international students office job is to check whether you have 1 year of funding available, and only on the basis of that they will issue you an I-20. Like I said, there are very few universities, and one of them, the most popular one among them, is the San Jose State University, which is very popular among students. This is one of the few universities that says that you need to provide the financial documents along with your application. Otherwise, they will not review your application at all. Whereas most of the other universities will not will not ask you for any financial documents while applying. They will only ask you only if you are admitted to the program. So the department that you are applying to first makes a decision on whether or not you are supposed to be admitted based on your overall profile. And if you are admitted, and if then in that case, of course, if you decide to join that university, then you will have to provide proof of funds or show proof of funds to the university. After which they will issue you what is known as the I-20, and the I-20 is required for applying for your visas. Okay, so the proof of funds can be your bank sanctioned bank loan letters. It could be your money that you or your parents or someone else in the family. It will not be even family. Anybody who is willing to sponsor, say that they are willing to sponsor you, has money in savings account, fixed deposits, and all that. Of course, this is something too early, maybe in your whole application process to worry about. But what I would suggest is that tentatively, at least you between you and your parents, you should plan how the finances are going to work out. Whether you are planning to take a loan, whether you are planning to spend money from your parents' savings or whatever it is. Once you have a rough idea of okay where the money is going to come from, things will be much easier at a later stage when it comes to actually showing, I mean, demonstrating to the university where the funds are going to come from. But this is more of a very procedural thing. You need not worry much about it at this moment. But talk to your parents and get a clear idea on where the funding is going to come from so that you and your parents are not in some kind of surprises at a later stage. So, and as far as the visa is concerned, before that, any questions related to funding or in terms of finances or anything that you have at this moment? Yes, Nikhil.
So I have a question. Supposing if you want to get a scholarship for a certain program,
Hmm.
so as you had suggested earlier that the early you apply it is better, But like if I apply early, are the prospects higher for me to get a scholarship from the university?
Again, it is a very depends on the university, but in most cases, I would say no, because what happens is most universities nowadays give you a decision first, and then after you have accepted the offer at a much later stage, they make a decision on the scholarships. So some of them would ask you to write a separate application or maybe fill out a separate application for scholarship applications. So applying early will not really help you get scholarships. So they generally will help you get an admission. It will improve your chances of might improve your chances of getting an admission, but not scholarships, because many universities will, after they have rolled out all the admits, sometime in the month of May or even sometime June, they might roll out scholarship offers. Very few universities would give out scholarships along with admission. Some do, but they are generally the private ones, and they are generally very expensive. I mean, like for example, Stevens, RIT, I know give scholarships along with the admission letter itself. So the admission letter, but a university like RIT, they are RIT is Rochester Institute of Technology. Again, good university. Stevens is also a good university, good location, but their tuition is slightly on the expensive side. I mean, RIT's tuition would come to somewhere around 65 to 70,000 for the entire program. But most students they give anywhere between 20 to 40% scholarship, and they give it along with the admission. So those are some of, even Stevens generally issue has a tuition of somewhere close to 60,000 for most for most programs. But they roll out when they give admissions. If your profile is good, they give out, and they have rolling admissions, and they give out scholarships. Not a lot, but somewhere around the 5 to 15,000 in that range of scholarship, $5 to $15,000 scholarship.
So, considering other universities, one has to apply separately for the scholarship after getting admission, or the university itself just notifies that this so and so student has got the admission.
Yeah. So often there is no separate application, but if there is a separate application, they would tell you about it. They would say it's generally available on their website or their internal portals about the scholarship application. But most universities don't have separate applications for scholarships. Overall, your profile is evaluated for admission and scholarships, but scholarship decisions are made later.
All right, thank you.
Yes, Madhurya.
Hi, Jason. So, will a better GRE and a IELTS score help me to secure a scholarship?
Yes, a high. Okay, yeah. When it comes to making scholarship decisions, right? More than the IELTS score, your GRE score matters. So generally, universities give scholarships, prefer students. I mean, if you see the chances of you getting a scholarship are higher for GRE if you have a very high GRE score. Including some universities who have waived off their GRE as an admission requirement. Few of them have also say that if you want to be considered for scholarship, then you will need a GRE. Few of them, not a lot, but yes, some universities have completely waived off. But yes, GRE scores and make a slightly better impact, especially if you are applying to business school programs or engineering management programs, like or maybe like when I say business school programs like MIS or business analytics programs. The GRE score has a very strong impact on the scholarship decision. The higher the GRE score, the higher the chances of getting a scholarship, and also higher the amount.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, Parag.
My question is regarding SOP actually. Like, I'm sorry, I'm taking it late, but like, uh, when I'm writing SOP or when I'm applying to colleges, I have when I'll do it, I will have 2 years of experience working with the company. But actually, when I'll be going, I would be having 3 years of experience. So,
Yeah.
what should be actual what should be mentioned out there, like?
So ideally, in the SOP, you won't mention how many years of experience you have. And if you write, I mean, one way to write about it is you just say that I have been working. I mean, I've been working since say July of 2021, if that is the case in your case. So since 2021, I've been working in so and so and so company in so and so project. But then when universities consider your overall profile, right, they generally consider your profile, um, assuming that you will work if you are working, right. So you will work till say June, July, August of 2024.
Yeah.
So that is how they would consider your profile. So they would consider your profile as a engineer, so and so GPA, GRE, and say 3 years of experience in the so and so sector.
Okay. Yeah.
That is how it will be. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I wanted. Yeah.
yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Now the F1 visa or the US F1 visa is honestly a very simple process, but because it is again a very subjective process, you will find a lot of rumors floating on the internet and between student groups about the F1 visa being a very complicated process. You need to prepare for the F1 visa and all that. All of that, just try to ignore it. Don't be worried about the F1 visa. I can tell you very with confidence is that if you are admitted to a good university, and when I say good university, that is anything in the probably top 70, 80 kind of ranked university, you have a fairly decent profile in the sense you don't have too many gaps in your education. When you completed your bachelor's degree in 4 years, 3 years, depending on the bachelor's degree. You don't have too many drops, year drops, or your GPAs are decent enough. When I say decent enough, in the sense anything about a 6.5 and above out of 10, 7 about 10 is a decent GPA. And you have a very good idea on where the funding for your education is going to come from. You don't need proofs of funding, but if you know that, okay, you can explain to the visa officer that where who is going to pay for your education, you will definitely get your visa. Visa officers only look at whether the university and the program that you are going to is a good university, because they want to make sure that you are a genuine student who is interested in education. The next thing that they will be looking at is whether you have the kind of academic inclination or maturity. Like if you have too many gaps in your education, your academic scores are very weak. um, After education, after you graduated 3 years ago and you have not been working anywhere, there is a gap too much, more than a year's gap in your profile, in your overall profile currently, and all and the finances are not in order, only then your visa gets rejected. The visa is based on an interview by the visa officer, which hardly lasts for a minute. You just have to go there and stand there and give your interview. And because they don't give you a very specific reason on why your visa is rejected in case it is rejected, many students fear the visa interview a lot. But honestly, there is nothing to be really worried about the visa interview. If the university that you go to is a good university, the visa officer will definitely give you a visa. This is something that I can tell you with confidence. So don't be worried about the visa process as such. Of course, when it comes to that point, you will have a lot of information, and by then you will have a lot of misinformation also with you in terms of what documents you need and all that. But just be, I mean, don't be worried about it. Don't worry about it. If you have any questions about the visa, about it right now, we can do that. I can discuss that right now. Anything specific that, but this is what, in short, the visa officers are going to look at: whether the student has the academic maturity, uh, whether you have the interest in academics, and they will be doing that by asking you a few questions on why do you want to pursue this program, why this university, tell us a little bit about. Sometimes they can ask you a little bit about your academics or the work that you're currently doing, in case you are working, and who is going to pay for your education. If those things are sorted, you will definitely be given a visa. Any questions so far? Yes, Varad.
Just for like knowing what is the cost associated with this F1 visa process. Like if like there can be scenarios like for one time I get rejected and then
Yeah,
second time I go. So like what can be an estimated
I
cost?
think it is $185 now, the visa application fee.
Okay. And like every time if I get rejected and I reapply, I would need $185, or how is
Correct,
it?
right? Yes, yes, you will have to pay $185.
Okay. Yeah.
I think here, let me. Okay. Any questions that maybe, I think most of the questions in the chat either I have discussed or Josna has answered them in the chat itself. But anything that is missed out so far? Uh, if you can share the values of how much it costs for a 2 year program in California, Texas. See, most universities, see, if you're looking at some of the universities, Texas is not very expensive, but California and NYU are slightly expensive. But most universities, it would like for if you're trying to study at NYU, you should be prepared with a budget of, I would say, 65 to 70 lakhs. California, it again depends. If you are looking at one of the UCs, that is University of California, the approximate tuition for a University of California for the complete program is somewhere around $55,000. And the living cost in California can again go up to, I mean, for a 2 year program, you should be budgeting for at least $25,000 additional cost. Um, that you might, so basically you're still looking at a 75 $80,000 cost, which would come to around 65 70 lakhs. So all this is okay. Now when I say this is the cost, this is the budget that you should be prepared with. But if you're again, there are public university, I mean, when I say, sorry, California state universities, which are typically known as the CSUs, that is California State Universities. There are many of them. There is, I mean, SJSU, San Jose State also is part of the California State University system, or there is CSU, Fresno, Fullerton, uh, Long Beach, CSU, LA, and several of them. The tuition at some of these CSUs is slightly cheaper. Tuitions are somewhere around the $35,000 for the entire program, and living cost can be another say 10 another 20 to 25,000 dollars. So even though they are in California, because the tuition at these California state universities is low, you might still spend somewhere around 45 to 50 lakhs for the entire program. Again, this is when I include say the living cost. This is assuming that you don't get any student jobs or internships during the entire program. Most students manage to cover up their living cost by working on student jobs. You are allowed to work on campus 20 hours a week as a student. Most students manage to get some kind of student job. If you get an RA or a TA, that is a research assistantship or a teaching assistantship, many universities would give you a partial or a complete tuition waiver also that would come with it. Again, it depends on the universities. Most public universities would give you partial or tuition or full tuition waiver if you get an RA or a TA. And that is why an RA or a TA, RA is a research assistantship, TA is a teaching assistantship, are more preferred over any normal student jobs. Because one is the stipend for RAs and TAs are also higher, and they also come with partial or full tuition waivers. But generally, many students, I would say around 10 to 15% of the students manage to get RAs or TAs while studying. 80% of the students manage to get student jobs, which helps them cover their living cost, but not the tuition part of it. And if you get an internship during the summer, internships pay anywhere between 5 to 6,000 per month. So generally, your internship might be 2 to 2.5 months. So you might easily earn somewhere around say 12 to $15,000 during the internship, which might again help you cover a part of your tuition for the next year. So if you're planning for an MS, I would say a budget of 50 lakhs. I mean, plan for a higher budget, but you should have a budget of around 50 55 lakhs at least to begin with. Quite possibly you might end up spending 35 40 30 to 35 lakhs for your entire masters. If you get do student jobs, if you get an internship, that is what you might effectively end up spending by the end of your masters. But as far as your planning goes, I would always say between your family loan, plan for a higher budget, so that in case you don't get student jobs or you don't get internships, or like 2 years back, 2 3 years back when COVID happened, all internship student jobs got cancelled. So you can't just stop your education because of that. You never know what is going to happen, so always plan for a higher budget. But if all goes well, you might not spend the entire amount. Okay, and this is your overall journey as a student on how it happens. So I'll quickly talk about what OPT is and what CPT is, and then beyond that, how do you, I mean, how much, what kind of work permits do you get in the US? So in the US, to do your internship, that is during the summer, the college issues you what is known as CPT. CPT is more like a certificate that they issue, which is a curricular practical training certificate, which allows you to do an internship in a company during the summer. Okay, the university will only give you a certificate if you show them an offer letter from a company for an internship. Um, and the internship is kind of relevant to the course that you're doing. Like you can't say, for example, if you're working or doing a master's in computer science degree, you can't get a letter from a restaurant saying that you want to work at the front desk of the restaurant or maybe as a waiter in the restaurant during the summer. They might give you a letter, but that will not give, the university will not give you the CPT because the job is not relevant to the course you are doing. Any job in a company that is related to IT, software, or anything related to that, and is kind of relevant to the master, I mean, to the course that you're doing or related to computer science, you will get a CPT. Beyond that, after you graduate, you get what is known as the OPT. I mean, not get, you will have to apply for an OPT with the government, and the government issues you what is known as the OPT. OPT is optional practical training, uh, which is basically a permission to work in the US, anywhere in the US. Now, the OPT is valid for 1 year, which means that you can work in the US for 1 year. It doesn't mean that you can stay in the US for 1 year without a job. It means that if you find a job, and there is a time limit to find a job, I think it is 60 days or 90 days. Within 90 days, if you find a job, you can continue working in the US for up to a period of 1 year, or basically till the end of your OPT, which is 1 year. At the end of your OPT, if you have a job, um, and your degree is a STEM degree. Um, STEM means science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. You can extend your OPT by another 2 years. So effectively, that gives you 3 years time to work in the US. Again, for everybody, most of you I know are going for a STEM program, but I would very strongly recommend that if you are going to the US, unless you have some alternate visa arrangements that are possible, go for a STEM program only. STEM is science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. Because if you don't go for a STEM program, you effectively get only 1 year of work permit. And by the end of that, if you do not get what is known as your H1B visa, that is, your company has to apply for your H1B visa and get it for you, you will have to return back to India. So, if you go for a STEM program, effectively you get 3 years to for your company, which gives them almost 3 to 4 chances for them to file for your H1. And by then, most likely, if you're lucky enough, you will get your H1 and you can continue working on the H1 for another 6 years. If you want to continue beyond that, sometime during your while you are on the H1, you will have to apply for your PR, that is your green card, that is your the employer also has to has to apply for you for your PR, that is your company has to do that, and then that will help you continue staying for, I mean, for a much longer period of time. So that is how the overall process works. But the main thing that you need to understand is that if you go for a STEM program, you will effectively get 3 years time to work in the US after you finish your masters. Again, this is 3 years time to work and not stay there unemployed. So that is not that you can just stay there unemployed for 3 years. It is 3 years time for you to work in the US. Any questions on this? So Rahul has a question about education loans. Whether if the how much loan can I think I'll just quickly talk about education loans. Now most banks and financial institutions give education loans. Banks will give you an education loan. Most banks will require some collateral. Collateral is some security which is generally property that they require you to keep with the bank. There are private lenders that would give you loans without collateral. And some of the private NBFCs that give you loans without collateral are HDFC, Credila. They are kind of the best in this business for non-collateral loans. There are others also. Avance, Incred are some of the other popular names that are there. but the rates and the services of HDFC Credila rates are comparatively cheaper. And without collateral, they give up to 50 lakhs. In some cases, in the past, for students with really good universities, they have gone up to 75 lakhs also without collateral. So they do in exceptional cases if your GRE scores are good, if your the university that you have got into is one of the top 25, top 30 universities, they make exceptions. Um, Otherwise, there are other companies like Prodigy Finance, Leap Finance, and Empower, which are companies which give you loans on in US dollars itself. So they don't give you loans in India. Um, they give you loans in US dollars, and some of them like Prodigy and Empower don't require any guarantor or any kind of collateral either. They have a list of universities on their website that they support. It's a big list of around 300 universities. And if your admit is from one of the universities, they will by default give you a loan. The loan is in US dollars. Of course, the rates are going to be somewhere around the 10 to 11% per annum for these kind of loans. And if you, so depending on your profile, you will have to then decide which loans are you eligible for and most comfortable with in case you are going for an education loan, and also what is your requirement. Collateral loans, that is loans in that are offered in India by banks, are the cheapest. Of course, for that, but you need collateral. Non-collateral loans are also good. Like I said, HDFC with non-collateral, they would again offer you around 11.5% loans. Uh, and the US loans are also equally around this 11.5%. So depending on whether you should go for a collateral loan, non-collateral loan, or US dollar loan, is would depend on the kind of funds you need and your overall profile, and whether you have sponsors, you have collateral or not. Of course, that is a very individual case, but those are basically broadly the options. Maybe we will. What we can also do is generally I do this AMA session. AMA is like I don't do a presentation, but it's only an ask me anything kind of a session. So if you guys are interested, maybe come next month, or maybe once you are a little ahead in the application process, we can do an AMA session where it will only be question and answers, so 1 hour only question and answers, where you ask me any question related to your profile or your applications or in general about loans, finances. So we can do a couple of them. Uh, I would recommend that you save my number. Most I have sent you a WhatsApp message with this thing. Now I use an automated tool to send WhatsApp messages, but if you don't save my number in your WhatsApp, sometimes these tools don't let me send WhatsApp to you because they say that this person is not in your contact list. Uh, so I would strongly recommend that you save my number, whatever name you want to save, you can save it. It doesn't matter. But if it's saved in your contact list, you will get messages from me. So if there are any further sessions or if there are any further videos that I put up online, you will get. I can send you those links. But if your number is not saved, if my number is not saved on your this thing, you may not get those messages. So I would recommend just save it, so that if there are future sessions, I can send you the links and other information that as and when required. I may also form generally what I also do is I generally form a Telegram group because that is much easier. And I keep posting on that, so you can join the Telegram group. I'll maybe start one maybe in this week, and I'll send you, I'll send you the link to that Telegram group so that you can join that, so that it can be a general discussion group amongst yourself, among students. And if you have any questions for me, you can ask me there as well. Any questions so far that we need to discuss? Let me see if there's
One
something here.
question I have, like, hello.
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah,
Just
how important we have to consider university ranking while applying? Suppose a program, like suppose I find like that curriculum is not little bit matching to what I need or something like that. So should we consider their ranking and go ahead, or should we find someone with low ranking and like I can afford it? So yeah, I can go with it.
I would say rankings, again, absolute rankings don't matter to a very large extent. In the sense, a university rank 20 is definitely not going to be much better than a university rank 25th, right? To that extent.
Mhm.
Of course, a
Okay.
university rank 20 is going to be much better than a university rank 60 or 70. But You can't say that just because the university's rank is 20, it is better than a university whose rank is 25th or 26th kind of thing. Plus or minus 5 to 10 points is 5, maybe even 10 is absolutely okay. So you don't have to choose a university because somewhere its rank is say 17th, and then you find a university whose rank is 25th, and that is you like that better and is a better fit. I would say go with that. But if your choice is between a university rank 30 and then a university rank 80, then I would say think again.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, Rahul.
So I wanted to ask that my first preference is to go for MIS programs, and I'll be graduating in fall 24 itself, like coming July 24. So effectively, I have only internship and project experiences. So how big a role will that play during my application for MIS particular programs?
They will play a role, but again, like I said, your overall GPA and GRE scores would be more important.
Okay, but so like I won't be taken aback by the not having a work experience because of the GRE and GPA,
No, they
right? So
won't be
I still
taken
had
back.
a
There are
chance to.
see, there are some universities, like to be very specific, University of Cincinnati, Florida State, University of South Florida, uh,
Hmm.
and CMU has a 1 year program for students with experience, for which they need experience. So these are programs that generally don't admit students without experience. So those are ruled
Okay.
out in your case. CMU has another program which is where they prefer where which is kind of students who have less than 1 year of experience. So you can opt for those. Other universities for MIS really don't. I mean, yes, if you have work experience, that is always a plus. But not having does not by default. I mean, throw you out of the application process.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Cool. It's almost 12:55. So we'll probably continue for 5 more minutes max. Do Mang companies? It was Fang earlier. Now it changed to Mang. Facebook changed its name to Meta. If people don't know, I think Madhurya has a question. What do only Fang companies sponsor H1 visas, or all companies basically sponsor? So all companies sponsor H1 visas. There is no restriction on a company to sponsor H1 visas. By Mang, basically he means Mang is a term used for Meta. What is that? Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. So they are some of the top IT companies those are there. So it is not that only those companies sponsor H1 visas. Even small companies with staff of around 100 or more can sponsor visas, and almost every company sponsors visas. There are some programs, especially uh, especially if you're working on projects that are related to defense, aeronautical sciences, space, and all that. Then they have policies that they will not sponsor visas because they are due to certain government restrictions. They are not supposed to. They are not allowed to hire internationals. Only in that case you may have some problem. But otherwise, I don't think. Being whether it's a Mang or non-Mang or any other company, or whether it's a mechanical engineering student or an industrial engineering student, you will not have a problem getting visa sponsorship unless you're working on unless the company is working is hiring you for a defense related project. You should not have a problem. Yes, Vaidhi, you have a question.
Hi, sir. So I had a question about the resume. Can I list non-relevant work experience in a non-chronological order?
You can, but generally in the resume, right? See, in the resume, you should write all your experiences, whether you are relevant, non-relevant, doesn't matter. Uh, and generally, the resume experience is written in the reverse chronological order. In the sense, the recent experience comes on top, and then you go backwards. So the most current experience is the one that you write on top. So now when you say no, if you can be a little more specific in the sense non-relevant and relevant, what do you mean by that?
So if I am applying to say robotics programs, but I have work experience in a consulting firm, so how do I phrase that on my resume and in what order?
I would say in that case, just list it in reverse chronological order. whatever is the latest that would come on top. It need not be related to your robotics field.
Would that be considered as a negative?
No, it
in-
wouldn't be considered as a negative. Any experience, see, generally universities will not see if you have relevant experience, especially for robotics, engineering programs, and all that. If you have experience, relevant experience, that might help you. But not having it is never considered as a negative.
Okay. I have relevant experience, so I don't think that should be an issue. I was just wondering where the non-relevant experience should show up.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, two questions here. One is, of course, is there a specific format for the resume? There is no specific format, but generally, if you just Google out on any professional resume format, you will find one. Again, resumes need not for MS applications, right? Need not be in one page. So don't try to cram up everything. So I have seen students who try to fit everything in one page. They try to increase margins, decrease font size, and all that, making it exceptionally difficult to read that resume. So don't try to just fit things in one page. Try to just make sure that even if up to two pages is absolutely fine, because this is not a job resume where the standard convention is that you have to fit it everything in one page. Two pages are absolutely fine. Keep it legible in the sense, don't use such my small fonts that it becomes a little difficult to read. Uh, so, and again, I think one question here that Vinal has is whether a 8.96 GPA is too low to get into a top 20 university. Now, Vinal, it is not really very low, but again, it also depends on, see, it's not just your absolute GPA that is going to be considered, whether it's 8.96. Universities would also be looking at your GPA in the later semesters. That is, if you have graduated, then maybe your fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth semester GPAs are more important. If you're not graduated, then your fifth and sixth semester GPAs are more important. And also, they would be looking at your GPAs in individual subjects, like maybe in core subjects related to computer science, how much is your GPA and all that. So if your GPA is low, is very good in those subjects, in relevant subjects, or in the later years, that is still a good GPA. 8.96 is still a good GPA to have. Some universities will also look at which university or college are you from. So that also makes a big difference. Not a very big, but still it makes a difference. There are some universities that are biased towards NITs or IITs or BITS kind of a thing. So they sometimes understand that, an 8.96 from an IIT is slightly different, or sometimes much different from 8.96 from a non-IIT. So there they understand, some universities understand these differences also. So all those things would matter, but just because it is 8.96 and not 9, it doesn't mean that they would automatically disqualify you from applying to a top 20 university. So there's another question. I have 314 on the GRE, but have two relevant research papers and IEEE and GPA of 9.5. So should I consider retaking the GRE to get into a top 20 pool of schools? So which program are you applying for? Sleghana, is that how you pronounce your name? I'm sorry. So MS in CS machine learning. See, if your quant scores on the GRE are good, if they are 166 and above, that would definitely be, you don't really need to retake the GRE. But if your quant scores are 165 and below, and a university in the top 20 requires the GRE, then I would suggest that you should retake the GRE. If you really feel that you can improve your GRE score, there is no harm in giving the GRE and giving it an attempt. But if you are doing that, study and do it. Just simply going and giving it may not help. If the idea is to improve your scores, and universities will always, so people who are giving GRE multiple times, right? Universities will always consider the highest of your attempts. So, for example, you gave the GRE, you have a 315. You feel I need to improve, but you are not very confident whether you will or not. So don't worry whether, okay, if I give it again and what if I score a 310? Then in that case, you don't report that score. you can report your earlier score only. So universities will always, even if the university gets to see or gets to know both your scores, they will always consider the highest of your attempts. So don't worry about mm, whether if I give it and the score drops and all that, that really doesn't matter. If you believe that okay, you deserved a better score and you can put in the efforts and get that good score, I would say go ahead and give the GRE again. Okay, any further questions, or then if you have any other questions that maybe we probably can think of after the session is over, or you missed asking them, just feel free to message me. My most of you have my numbers, but if not, I'll put both our numbers on the chat here, so that you can note it down. It's there on our website also. Did I? So I put mine and Josna's number on the chat. In case you have, you can just call or WhatsApp. We are generally available from say 8 in the morning till 10 in the night, any day of the week, holidays also. So if you have anything relevant to your this thing, applications or something that we missed out, maybe you missed out asking, or something that you want to, which is very relevant to your profile and you want to discuss it individually, feel free to call or message and we'll be happy to help you with that. Okay, and as I said, if you can add me on the me and Josna both on the as your contact, at least me, because I'll be sending. I send most of the messages, the bulk messages. Sometimes I send, and if my name is not on your listing, on your contact list, sometimes you may not get my messages. So, also, if you want, I mean, some of the topics that we discussed today, I have some videos on my YouTube channel. You can maybe check on that, and there you will find some. I keep posting. I will be posting some in the month of August, September. So you can follow that, subscribe to that channel, and that will also help you answer some of the questions related to your application, general questions related to your application, visas, and all that. Yeah, that's the link to the YouTube channel. Josna, I just posted. Okay, once again, thanks for joining, and hope to see you in the next session as well, where we'll do a more of AMA, ask me anything kind of a question, where it will not be a presentation but only question and answers.
Thank you for joining us.
Bye.